into it. So last week, I actually saw this little note on Laura's fridge. So Laura Hughes, who's here in one of the screens, she can give us a little wave. There we go. So I was staying with her and her family for a little bit in Brisbane in Australia. And this little note on her fridge just really sparked my interest and some questions that I want to explore with you together today. So I just love to read this together with you. And then you can think about what symptom applies to you in your life and which of these bullet points you think you're good at and which of them you think you want to work on. So does anyone in particular want to read? Feel free to just read it all. Otherwise, I'm happy to.
I'm happy to read. I'll just sit there first. He's looking down. Well, you have to read close to Jesse's computer.
Yeah, do you want to sit next to me?
Okay. So I'm just reading through the whole list.
So yeah, just start here.
Some signs and symptoms of contentment. A tendency to think and act spontaneously rather than on fears based on experiences. An unmistakable ability to enjoy each moment. A loss of interest in judging other people. A loss of interest in interpreting the actions of other people. A loss of interest in conflict. A loss of the ability to worry. This is a very serious symptom. Frequent, overwhelming episodes of appreciation. Contented feelings of connectedness with others and nature, frequent attacks of smiling, an increasing tendency to let things happen rather than make them happen, and increased susceptibility to the love extended by others, as well as the uncontrollable urge to extend it.
Awesome. Yeah, so I really love this list of symptoms. And I'll be honest with you, I noticed that I need to work on a lot of these. So I confess, although I'm grateful for, I have so many things to be grateful for, I tend to focus on what I can't do or I don't have. So reading this made me feel quite convicted. So I'm ready to take action now. And I hope that you also feel the same way. So I'll just leave you a minute to maybe write down one thing you feel like you're good at, one thing where you feel, yes, I feel like I'm already good at this, and one bullet point that you really want to work on in the next week. So I'll just leave you some time, or you can take a screenshot on your phone, whatever you find. And if you want these slides later, I can also send them. So you can just keep it in your mind. Yeah, so I'll give you some time.
You're going to say one thing you good at, one thing
Yeah, sure. Can you see? Just give me a heads up when you're ready. Yeah. Only two things. So one thing you're good at, one thing you want to improve. All right, if you scream and shout, then I will give you more time, but I think you might be done. So you can feel free to share this later on. For me, for example, I feel like I'm not interested in conflict. I'll avoid conflict at all costs, but for me, I tend to worry a fair bit. So that's something I want to work on. Okay, so this whole theme of contentment just seemed to pop up again over the last few weeks in the verse of the day on the Bible app, and the same message of godliness with contentment is great gain kept echoing over the past few weeks. So just the other day, I saw a little quote at someone else's house in Sydney, and that read, "The secret of contentment," this is a spoiler, by the way, so yeah, keep this in mind. "The secret of contentment is the realization that life is a gift, not a right." And the verse that we're basing this on, of course, is in 1 Timothy 1 verse 6, which says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out of it." So you might have guessed it, but that's our topic for today. Contentment by godly love. Okay, so, all right. Before we read a section from Philippians, I just want you to listen to this short section. So one thing that we really need to realize, what this little quote tells us, is how dependent we are on the gift of God's love and grace. So what does that mean? What's God's love and grace? It's the life he gives us, the salvation he's given us through Jesus, and the eternal life. And that we realize the necessity to live by God's love, to live godly lives in which we love and share the faith we have, the only thing that really stays after we're gone. All right, so we're just gonna work on that as we go through this presentation. Okay, so we're gonna read a little section, and that's in Philippians 4, verse 1 to 13. So if you wanna turn that up, we can, how shall we read it? We can read around, or I can read it out to you.
I can just read around.
Read around? Okay. And in this section, it will be great if you can look out for two things. First of all, look out for Paul's love for the Philippians and his contentment in all circumstances. So these two things are the things we want to look out for. Shall I just pass this around? Shall I? Okay.
Sorry, that was, yeah.
Little, would you like to? Okay, let's start.
I'll start reading now. How many verses shall I do?
One each.
One? Yes, so you do one and then I'll do two. 1, 2. And, or we can do two.
Yeah, two.
Yeah. Philippians 4 verses 1. Okay. Therefore, my brothers, you whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, that is how you should stand firm in the Lord, dear friends. I plead with Euodia, and I plead with to agree with each other in the Lord.
Yes, and I ask you, my true companion, help these women since they have contended at my side in the cause of the gospel, along with Clement and the rest of my co-workers whose names are in the book of life. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God.
Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable, and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise.
What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity.
Not that I am speaking of being in need, but I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need.
I can do all things through both of the strength of his Lord.
Okay, thank you. So does someone see a verse about contentment?
11. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, verse 12. That's pretty obvious at the end, where he says, I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. And anywhere else? Anyone got any other?
Verse 4 made me think of the one bullet point where it said that you the laughter one.
Yeah.
Like, what was the
Well,
thing?
episodes of laughter.
With the tax of smiling.
That's right. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And verse 6, don't worry about anything, that's contentment.
Verse 6.
Yeah. Verse 7 we don't use.
Actually, the whole chapter.
And also Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's the Thanksgiving comes the joy and the laughter and the love and wanting to share and smile and be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also in verse 7, where it says, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And this peace of God, that's pretty much contentment. That's like the peace of mind that we have as soon as we accept it. And I think the others mentioned that, Liesl, you did a talk on guarding your heart as well.
Yes.
So that kind of relates as well, this mind, these thoughts of peace. What about love? The second thing we were looking for. Anyone found love in this chapter? Just start at the beginning.
Yeah, because I love, he shows love to his friends and his friends in Libya and to share the gospel.
Yeah.
So it's extending that to others as well.
Yeah.
To extend the love.
Exactly. So the verse 1 is probably the most obvious place where you can find love. I mean, it's amazing. Would we say to others that they are our joy, our crown, and that we really long for them? I think I really love his language here. So in essence, Paul wants them to show the same love. Also at the start of this letter. So if you look at the slide, you can see Philippians 1 verse 9 to 10. This is the start of the same letter where Paul writes, and this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. And to Titus, he confirms how important this love is. He writes to Titus, then the older women can urge the younger women to love and to be self-controlled, pure and kind. So here we are all together. We can encourage each other to love. That's why we do this. Yeah, so we've delved into the topic of love. And I know, yes, love sounds a bit cliche because this word is so often used and so often overused and misused. So we seem to gloss over it because it's just a normal word these days. But when a young man came to Jesus and asked him, what is the greatest commandment? Then Jesus says, what does he say? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So this is essential. We really want to work on this kind of love, and that will then lead to contentment. So today we want to learn about real life godly love from each other, actually, yeah, that's right. Okay, so before we brainstorm together, I thought it would make sense if we can break down areas of our life that we show godly love in. So does anyone remember that verse about love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind? How can you break this verse down into 3 types of love? So remember the verse, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. So does that make sense? Which 3 areas of love may I be referring to? Areas of our life that we extend love to another being. To who?
So ourselves, our neighbor, and God. Right?
Yeah. So we have God, we have other people, our neighbor, and ourselves. So those are the 3 areas that we want to have a look at. So here are the 3 areas we show love and correlating verses. And I've put them up there in order of importance so you can see the size. God is written quite big, then people also big, the self a little bit smaller, but also essential. So, and also the development, how we can learn to love. If we love God, then we'll also love people, and we'll also learn to love and respect ourselves adequately. So if we love God, we will love his people, of course, by telling them about God's love, and that leads us then to accepting and loving our God-given role of being loved messengers, ambassadors of his love, and being empowered to live in love and self-control as his uniquely designed masterpieces. So we'll just quickly have a little look at these verses that we've got up on the slide. Does someone want to read the verse about God? I think it's a bit small for you. I'll just read it out. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the one about people says, love one another as God has loved us. And the one under self says, the spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-control. So there will be heaps more verses, and we can brainstorm more of those later. But I just thought of this illustration. Maybe that's also helpful for remembering. So this illustration shows loving God and Jesus encompasses loving people and also ourselves. So you love God by loving others. Like Jesus says, whatever you do to the least of these of the people, you do to me. And John says, you can't love God and not love your brother. And we can't say, so that shows loving people is part of loving God. And also loving self is part of loving God, because we can't say God is right and we love God and then criticize him by doubting that we were actually fearfully and wonderfully created by him as his loved and saved masterpiece. So it all comes together, but we need to find the right balance. So I must say I battle with this a fair bit, especially the self part, because I'm sometimes quite prone to like self-doubt and just worrying that I'm not enough for anyone. And that takes up too much of my mind, that I sometimes feel not quite able to do that next step of love, to reach out to other people. And that then tends to lead to my love for God to grow a bit more feeble. So I think this is really essential that we look at this, because a few years ago, or even a few months ago, I thought that thinking of myself was instantly selfish and therefore a sin. And especially with many talks on postmodernism and the very relevant verse about valuing others above yourselves, that kind of created a kind of wrong image in my mind. But God doesn't want us to think badly of ourselves. It actually conflicts with his will. So you can't, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve humans and think badly of yourself and also love God. So he says, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it, like Liesel's class said. And yeah, so that's something I'm wanting to work on. And we all have different personalities here. So you might feel you don't relate to this feeling. You might just be different, and you might be past that stage of self, and you find it maybe sometimes tricky to develop love for other people, for specific people. So, but I hope we all agree that we can grow in some form of love. Do we all agree? Yes, good. All right. So now I want to go into our brainstorm so you can all join in a little bit more. And this is a bit overwhelming, maybe first, but I hope you can see the top panel of the chart. Might be a bit tricky for the people here in the room to see, but basically, if you look at the left panel down the side, we have God and Jesus at the top, then people, and then self. And at the top and the top panel, we have our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And I try to kind of categorize this into how we can love these three different categories, these three different beings with our heart, so with all our love. So by figuring out some verses that show us how we can love these three beings, I'll call it now, with our soul. So I thought that maybe means pure actions that we can do to love others with our mind. So what are our thoughts of others or ourselves or God and Jesus, and with all our strength. So specific talents that we can implement and use for God. So we'll just go through this row by row, and if you have any ideas, please shout it out and add to them. There's some spaces that are still free that we can write in, but I'll just go through the not the column, the row that says God and Jesus. Okay. So with verses, I've just put in the verse about love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Can you think of any other verses that talk about loving God and Jesus? If not, that's no problem. We can move on to the next about how we can do it. So I've written down, so in this part, we're here, I've written down being passionate about reading and praying daily. And everyone has different strategies for how to do that. So does anyone have any more ideas about how we can actively love God by prayer, reading, or any other actions? Singing.
I sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So let's go up here.
I like having a reminder on my phone every day of different daily verses and that sort of stuff, because I'm not real good at keeping up with daily readings, but when it's right there on my phone, it helps me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah. And it's just one little bite-sized verse, one little chunk that you feel like you can really memorize throughout the day. Or yeah, that's good. Cool. All right.
I think we would be showing that doing an act of kindness be showing love to God, or is that going to fall into the people?
Yeah, I think that's why that graphic, I put up that graphic. It's like it is loving God, but I think I'd put it in the people section. So I'll put that in the people section, act of kindness.
No, like act of kindness. There was a song I was listening to earlier, which very nicely, but anyway, I'll think about it.
Yeah. All right. And then our thoughts of God and Jesus. That I think the reason why God tells us so often about his character traits and why he wants to know why he wants us to know who he is that we have a clear image of his character and really reflect him. Because if we think of him as a disappointed father who is disappointed every time we sin, then we'll be like that to others. Like we won't be as merciful to others. So our thoughts could maybe be full of gratitude for his love. Yeah. All right, and in the strength column, I put in the singing as well. Many people love singing. I love singing as well, or making music.
It might not be my strength, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, and it doesn't have exactly.
Praise.
Exactly, it doesn't have to be a strength. It's just doing it for the right reason. So yeah. And I think like, you go, Liesl.
No, there's a verse in Psalms where it says make a joyful noise.
Yeah.
It doesn't say
Yeah.
it has to be
Perfect.
It's just a noise.
Yeah, did you hear that? It's all about making a joyful noise, not about singing pitch perfect. Yeah. Yeah, and at the moment, I think, what's it called? Not poetry slam, but spoken word. That's really popular at the moment, and a really nice way of praising. Like it's like a poem in essence. So many people are really good at that. And just taking the time. Anyone can take the time. It's just doing it, making the time. Yeah. Okay. Let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. I'll just hop on to the next section about loving people. So here's one verse. Love one another as God has loved us. And one thing I read recently is the best thing, the most loving thing we can do to others is by putting their spiritual health first. And that can mean a lot of things, but it helps answers a lot of questions and decisions about what we should do and how we should answer our friends. And building a connection by, being vulnerable about things, and that's pretty hard. One other really interesting idea and project that someone showed me in Sydney that I want to share with you is called the Loved Bible Project. And this is a way of loving people by handing out a loved Bible, which was personalized for them. So you get a Bible, then you make little post-it notes in the pages that you find relevant, and basically lead them through a theme, be it how to overcome anxiety, or a theme like, it can also be first principles, and just give them that loved Bible, and then they see how much time and effort you spent into making this for them. And that can be the best gift you could ever give to someone, which leads to their eternal life in the end, God willing. So that's one idea that you can maybe take home and do in your sisters' classes wherever you live, just as a little project. There's these workbooks freely available. I can send these out to you as well, as PDF, if you're interested. We also had acts of kindness. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, Liesl? Or
That's what I did anyway.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, anywhere where you could show kindness to somebody without them maybe expecting it.
Yeah.
Look at Tamsin, what you guys have done now. So we went to take a donation to Thames Tots, and then the volunteers volunteered. Random act of kindness to come and play with the children tomorrow afternoon and the materials and just pop it up.
Yeah.
Which was a bit overwhelmed today, but tomorrow's a really nice day.
Yeah. Yeah, perceiving the need, where the need is, and where people need appreciation and don't really get it, although they're doing so much. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I'll just zoom out a little bit so that you know what we're actually looking at. So we just went into the heart section about the verse, then we looked at the actions we can do for people, and now we're going to look at thoughts of them. And I think this is a really tricky one, because I'm often comparing myself to others, and that's something that Paul says. I've not got the verse out now, but it's in Corinthians. He says we don't compare ourselves. That's not something we should do. And of course we all know that, but doing it in action is sometimes a lot harder. But by really loving them, loving their different personalities, loving all of our different strengths and also weaknesses, and not thinking everyone else is perfect and you're the one who's not perfect, because that also doesn't help in loving others. So just appreciating how many different members of the body we are, and how we're all essential and all vital to make one big body. And service, of course, like serving others and thinking of how we can serve them. That verse in Philippians is great about whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure. Those are the thoughts we should be thinking on, and thinking well of others. And I met a really amazing sister in Newcastle who I stayed with, and what stuck with me about her is she kept doing positive gossip about others. So what I mean by that, she kept telling me about, this person, they're so good at, speaking to everyone and going up to people after the meeting, or she just had good report to say about everyone I asked her about. And I really loved that. So being that person, speaking well of others without them hearing it, because in the end, that might come through, and that's the best compliment someone can ever receive, that they were spoken well of without them knowing. if you have any other ideas about the thoughts section, how we can love others with our thoughts, then feel free. Yeah, I love that. Rachel just said gratitude journal. So gratitude for what someone else did for you. Yeah. And then telling them
what they're doing for others as
but
well.
yeah. Or maybe giving them a little card or something. I'll put that in, saying I really appreciate what you did.
You've got right cards in. Oh no, sorry, that's in the next one.
Oh yeah. Well, you can plan cards, you know, plan gratitude in your mind with thoughts. You know what I mean? Okay.
That's actually one way to, if you're upset with someone, or if you're finding it hard to love someone, whether it be a spouse or a family member or something, they actually say to write down things that you're grateful for because of them. And then when you get to a couple of them, you're like, okay, actually, like the one little thing I'm annoyed around that doesn't actually matter too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Like you said, praying for others.
Lucy.
I know. I can see that with 100.
Yeah, thanks, Landy. Praying for others. Yeah, and often I hear, well, the only thing we can do now is pray. And it's true, but that's the best thing we could ever do. Like, that's the best gift we can give to someone, is praying for them with all our heart, because nothing we do or give would make them feel better. Only God can make them feel better. So we can do actions and everything, but not forgetting to pray. Yeah, I like that point. Okay. Next column. What was it all about? Strength, talents, or things that we can all do. So for loving other people, there's a really interesting book about love languages, and I think many of you know this. I haven't actually read it myself, but I've
give a taste.
yeah, exactly. I've heard a lot about it. Anyway, there's different love languages, and you know what your love language might be, and just use it to the full capacity. Maybe that might be giving gifts or spending quality time with someone, giving them hugs, overcome your self-doubt and just do it. Yeah, and then encouragement, of course, by words or actions. Preaching, that's the best love we can show to someone, is yeah, supporting them, asking them what they're struggling with and how God can help lighten their load, because we're not the saviors, but God can. Yeah, visiting people, random flowers, writing cards. And there's actually right now, there's a flower service that delivers flowers to anyone around the world. So you can be on the other side of the world, say, deliver flowers tomorrow with this card, and it'll arrive tomorrow without you even being there. Yeah, so that's really cool. Writing cards. I'm sure you have loads of more ideas if you want to share. Yeah, I think we've got a fair amount.
So you've listed quite a few. So
I don't want to take away.
It'll have to go back and actually slowly mull over them. And
sure,
yeah,
this is a lot to take in. But yeah, I can send it, or you can take screenshots later. Yeah. Okay, we're on our finish run, our last category, and that's about loving self. And verse-wise, I have one I'm thinking of, but I would want to ask you if you have a verse that you find shows that it's necessary to accept our God-given calling and role and importance of being here. Yeah, I love that one. It's a psalm somewhere. I don't know where, but it's a psalm.
don't feel that.
So being fearfully and wonderfully made. Yeah.
So we've got to love our neighbour as ourselves. We've got to love
Yep.
ourselves first.
The fearfully and wonderfully made is Psalm 139,
Thank you.
verse 13 to 14 and 15 maybe.
Okay, super. Thanks. Oopsie. Yeah. Yeah, this verse, love your neighbor as yourself. By loving others, naturally you feel more happy in yourself as well. So then maybe you can love yourself more. But of course, you have to also, if you feel like you're doing too much and you're not actually having any time to stop, be still, and talk to God, and then that's also, of course, you need to take some time. Yeah.
There's also Colossians 3:14. Clothe yourself in love towards yourself and others.
Yeah, that's so good. I hadn't heard of that one. Thanks.
And Proverbs 19:8, to acquire wisdom is to love oneself.
Proverbs 19 verse 8.
Yeah.
Good. To acquire wisdom is to love oneself. Wow. Is it? Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to mention it because I didn't understand earlier whether you were saying that, how you had God really big and then people a little smaller and us really small. So I was going to ask, were you meaning that we must firstly show love to God, then to people, and then us? Or is it show love to God? Because that's the most important. And by us showing love to him and getting to know him better, then apply those things to ourselves so that we can be the better person to then love others. Not to say others are less important than us, because you want to love your neighbor as yourself, but I do think if you don't first have yourself
the core, you have to, maybe the process and development is also from the inside out. Like you have to love yourself and then others. But yeah, that was more to show what loving God means. Loving God means loving others, but it also means loving yourself. So it encompasses all of that. Okay. But it could also be a process, like a development.
Just say it again. What wisdom is?
To acquire wisdom is to love yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, because with wisdom you can then apply that knowledge to become wisdom or wise in knowing how to love God better and love your neighbor and show acts of kindness or
yeah, and acquiring wisdom is looking after yourself. Yeah. Interesting.
No, you have to share your things though.
No, I was thinking that how we say we have to clothe ourselves with Jesus and we have to put him on. So we put him on, and then by putting him on, you love him, so you start loving yourself so much. So or you love yourself with him over you and you are clothed with him. So I really love one of Proverbs 31, which is clothed with strength and dignity, because I just feel so much strengthened by knowing that I've got him covering me, and by the blood of Jesus, he is in me and over me, and then I feel strong, and that I love feeling strong, and I love feeling dignified because he's over me and he's watching me.
Can you read that verse again? Is that right?
Proverbs 31:25. So she's clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. It's 31:25.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I love that point about because we've accepted Jesus. It's not about us in the end, but we can be strong in ourselves because we know Jesus is living in us, and that's why we don't need to worry. Yeah. Because of course you don't want to fall off the balance on the other side. You want to be like proud about yourself or anything. But yeah, working is Thank you. Okay. So how does that work in action? I think one important point is where it says in one of the letters, keeping your body a temple, looking after what you put in your mind and your body, but also like physically. So considering a healthy lifestyle maybe is looking after yourself and therefore being able to give give your best to God, because you're you're looking after yourself. And also patience until marriage with all our desires. Any other ideas?
So the keeping your body a temple is one of the verses that come up when people talk about piercings and tattoos. Because like they don't actually have specific verses. Like, there's only one verse about tattoos specifically in the Bible. But I know like this is the one verse that comes up a lot for people who want to maybe say that it's right or wrong, like which way you should go. But I like that you actually said there about considering a healthy lifestyle, because by not looking after your health, that as well is not like, I love thinking of it in a way of saying that this is not actually my body, like it's been given to me to do good for God in this life. But in this life, basically in this life that I have, like this is what he's given me, and if you don't look after it and you're not healthy, then how can you fully do his work? That is,
and exactly, and Paul also says physical training or endurance is of some value, but our training in our hope is of course more important, but he does say it is of value, so we should consider that value and see how we can implement that in our life. Thanks.
I just know well about eating healthy, your brain works better. And if you want to be wise, if you're asking for wisdom, like how are you going to do that? But also, sorry, going on like Lisa was saying just now about with people, if you're upset with someone, to write a gratitude journal. So if you're upset with yourself and you've got negative thoughts about yourself, you start reading down that dark slippery stuff, to actually write a gratitude journal, or just write gratitudes down. Very difficult to do when you're not in a good space, but some more thankfulness, and I think that can help you learn to actually start being a little bit more positive towards yourself. You realize can't always be perfect, but as long as you are work in progress.
Is that gratitude about anything in your environment, or about
what will it personally affect you? So whether it's affecting your soul, or whether it's affecting your thought processes, or even physically. So I think also maybe writing down like little achievements, not achievements, like I'm trying to think, if you that day, like if you're struggling with something and that day, let's say it's easy to use like healthy eating maybe. If that day you didn't touch a chocolate or didn't touch something unhealthy, like to write down, like even if it's a small little achievement, like that's what I did, because I think you're so harsh on yourself, like you are, like what they say, you're your worst critic, because you whatever actually you think worse than what it actually is. So by adding things of looking at where you came from and what you've done.
Even like pushing yourself outside of the comfort zone. If you've done something today that you would normally shy away from, and making an excuse for not doing because you feel uncomfortable, you feel sad or whatever, doing that, and you manage to do it, recognize that, celebrate that.
It's good. And also acknowledging that verse about be confident of this, that he who has begun a good work in you will lead it unto completion at the day of Jesus Christ. And so often I feel like, fail that again. Like it's actually okay as long as we're trying.
Mhm.
We will never be able to be perfect. And if we have that expectation of ourselves to be 100% now, then we don't understand God's grace now, and that it will be completeness in the kingdom. And it can't be complete if we would already attain completeness in this life. So being kind to yourself that you're not going to be 100%. Yeah. But still trying 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Step down. So
Column of soul. Like you're holding or
this is the column of soul, so
Yeah.
pure actions or being. It's hard to define, hey? What does soul
Well,
mean?
I was just thinking of something really practical, maybe, is we tell this to our young people, is to get off of social media. Like, not
Yeah.
necessarily delete everything, but get off of it, as in don't spend that much time scrolling, like
Mhm.
through, like we use Facebook a lot and Instagram a lot, but everybody probably thinks I never look at their, okay, I don't actually, but it's like, it's not that I'm specifically not going to look what you're doing. It's just, I post a lot, so they think I'm on Facebook a lot, but I'm actually just always posting, but I'm not scrolling. But why I'm thinking, yeah, maybe if it works there or not, is because we can be very harsh on ourselves, thinking that we're not perfect. Going on your point where you were thinking, like saying we are striving to be really good and attain that perfection, but in God's eyes, not necessarily the goal
Yeah.
of what perfect would be, but it's very difficult to think. Like I think the other bullet point was there, like don't judge or not judging other people,
Mhm.
but it's very difficult to like you kind of get to live in this world where you think everybody else is doing wonderful and everyone else is happy and everyone else is such a good person because they always smiling and always having a great like time with their children and spouses and everything. But meanwhile, like behind the cameras and stuff, it could be totally different. So
Mhm.
to not get stuck in that world, but in order not to get stuck there, you don't want to be there on
Yeah.
the screen. So to
Yeah.
actually love yourself enough to not care
Mhm.
about scrolling, yeah. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I really know that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, and also that verse about whose standard are we measuring by? Are we measuring ourselves by the human standard or by God's standard? And like that verse about you can't serve two masters. We often think of that one master as money and the other master is God. But in my life, like I don't care too much about money, but I care about what people think of me and that status and all of that stuff that we want to forget about, but it's still there. So we can't please humans, and like being that people that everyone loves, that person that everyone loves, but being that person that God loves, not by earning his love, because we can't earn his grace, it's not by merit, but just being grateful for who he says we are. Okay, thank you. Okay, last little section is strength or talents. We've covered a lot. Is there anything anyone still wants to share in this for this section about how we can use our strengths to look after our temple? I just had a thought of creativity, like doing something creative for God or for others is also having a bit of time to stop and do something that you actually enjoy. Yeah. Yeah. Hope this all makes sense to you. Please let me know if you disagree, because that's good. We have to also see if there's something we don't agree on, and then understand if we can understand it better. So
May I go back to just one that came to mind?
Yep.
On the mind of God and Jesus, how you think of Jesus and God.
is in nature. Constantly I'm aware of them with whatever, through the wind, through the rising of the sun, the setting down of the sun. Just seeing new life coming up makes me think of resurrection. So just the different seasons with constantly making bringing God into mind.
Yeah, seeing God in everyday life. And there's this really amazing magazine called Seasons. Have you heard of it?
Isn't it this often?
Yeah.
But they
Some sisters in Sydney, they make a new one each year, and the new one's coming out soon. And they talk about anything and everything, different seasons of life that you might find yourself in, be it the mum that has to let her kids go because they are, moving out or something, or any seasons of life, be it grief or also positive times, and how we can see God in every situation, and share our experiences. So there's a lot of sisters from all over the world that have written contributions, and if you feel like you have something to share, that they would always love to hear new articles and send them in. Anyway, so if you can get hold of one of those or chat to me about it. Yeah. Okay. I've lost track of time, but yeah, here are just some things we're going to whiz through. There's some projects that you can do if you feel like you want to work on one of these sections or loves most. That you could start a prayer journal. You can start the 30-day fruit challenge. That's a little booklet about working on your fruits of the Spirit in your life. Then habits that we can ingrain, like one sister mentioned, I think it was Yola, mentioned the verse of the day, that's encouraging to you, or was it someone else? And yeah, there's always the verse of the day with a little story on the YouVersion Bible app, and you can make a habit of every time you wake up and you grab your phone because your alarm's on there. Don't go straight into WhatsApp, but go straight into the Bible app and see the verse of the day and listen to that story and that devotional, and has a prayer there as well. And you can spend as much time there as you want to looking at that verse. Yeah, and writing down experiences, how you have progressed and how you have grown in your love for God, or you feel like how you've seen God love you by answering your prayers. Making a little journal for that as well, answered prayers journal, something like that. All good ideas. I can't say I'm doing any of those myself. This is just things I would love to do if I stick with it more. So yeah, I think, yeah. So there's other ideas, heaps of ideas about prayer, how we can build our relationship with God. Some interesting prayer techniques that I heard of some people. Some people use the 5-finger prayer. Ask me about that if you want to hear more about that later. Someone once said he has a vision in his mind of entering a big house when he prays. It's like he enters a new room for each part of the prayer. So he divides the Lord's Prayer up into a lot of rooms. Like the first one is the adoration room, the praise room, where it's all about hallowed be your name. And then he adds in all of his personal parts there about why he wants to praise God, and then he moves on to the next room just to keep focused, because I find I drift off a lot while I pray, and that helps being a bit more focused, or just writing it down, something like that. I told you about the Love Bible Project, that's the one about how we can love people in action, and starting that as a little project, doing a little bit of that with your other sisters. There's other books, and maybe also that affirmation challenge. We haven't talked about the word affirmation, but it's just pretty much what Leona was also mentioning about looking at what achievements you have done, and maybe not just achievements, but how your attitude is, because it's not about what we've done or how far we've got, but why we want to get there, or why we're keeping going. So yeah, we can add more there if you feel like there's more time, but I think it's it's time to wrap up and we can get back to this in the discussion. So I'll just quickly go back to screen share. Present. Okay. Oh, I've actually went to the right page. Okay, so in summary, this verse about loving God foremost and loving your neighbor as well as yourself is just the crucial verse that is so simple but so essential that we can take home and memorize throughout the week. And yeah, use those strategies that we've looked at today, and hopefully they can help you. And as you work on those, work on that godly love, these should follow. So you can have a look at your few statements that you wrote down at the start of the class, and just check in again next week maybe, or following days, how your progress is going, and write that on your affirmation lists when you see the progress. Yeah, so I hope this resonated with you, and for the people who are here, got a few reminders to take home, and little something that you might in your sister's class, wherever you are, that you can maybe do together, like making little bookmarks or little bags or posters, whatever. Here's a little sheet that can help with Bible reading and staying focused while doing the Bible readings. So you can just take a screenshot, or if you want to do something like that yourself. Yeah, here's a nice verse to finish up with. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things He had planned for us long ago. And one final verse. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And yeah, we're all from so many different parts in the world, but we've all been put here for a reason. And like Esther was put in the kingdom to save the Jews, God has put us where we are to, yeah, be a witness to the people around us. And yeah, God willing, spread that love that we've been learning about. So thanks everyone. And yeah, feel free to chat more, share ideas. How you pray or love or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.